What's up, everyone? I'm Eric July, founder and owner of Rippaverse Comics and the writer of ISOM #1. Thanks to all of you that were part of our over 60,000 comics that were sold with our first pre-order campaign. As I always say, we have the greatest customers in the world. Now, with that being said, I wanted to take some time to really give you some insight about the company. We made $3.7 million between the books and merchandise during ISOM #1's campaign window. Though mostly in jest, people are now calling me a multi-millionaire. Though that's not necessarily inaccurate, it's not just liquefied assets. Nearly all of the money is tied up within the company, and it doesn't go as far as you may think. So what's happening with the $3.7 million? It's impossible to give you every single line item or cost, but we can for sure give you some perspective. Let me first explain to you the setup of the company. The Rippaverse is 100% private, with me being the sole owner. There are no external investors. While by itself this isn't necessarily abnormal, it becomes more of an anomaly when you consider that we also do our own publishing and distribution. This is not an industry standard. You'll see some smaller companies keep their fulfillment in-house, but once you start getting into like the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of books, the vast majority of those publishers have someone else doing the distribution. Some of you are going to already know this, but I don't think this knowledge is as common as you may think. For a very long time, nearly all major comic book publishers used Diamond as their distributor. In 2020, there was a breakup with two of the biggest publishers going elsewhere. So while Diamond is still doing their thing, you now have Penguin, Random House, and Lunar in the mix. The bottom line is that it is very rare to have a major publisher that's doing their own distribution. Why, you may ask? It's because the distribution is another business in itself, and offshooting this onto another company means one less thing that they have to worry about. Also, it used to be seen as a way for retailers to easily order the books for their stores because it was a central location. As an actual comic book customer, you're usually the third or so buyer of the book, technically. The publisher sells to or gives a cut to the distributor, and the retailers are purchasing their product through the distributor. This has always made reported sales numbers for this industry kind of suspect because those numbers are usually just products shipped or sold to retailers, not actual customers. The Rippaverse handles our own distribution. Though we do sell directly to comic shops, that probably only represents maybe 2% of the sales. Most of our sales are straight to you, the customers. With all of this being said, the Rippaverse is basically two different companies, a publisher and a distributor. So all of the costs associated with it, we're the ones that have to pay it and assume the risk. Considering that we're just getting started, the money has to be used to reinvest into this company and pay for the operational costs. I've already made it public that I used over $200,000 of my own money to launch the company. In reality, it was closer to $300K. No loans. This went towards paying all of the employees and contractors, the artists for ISOM #1, our lawyers, the website building, the first prints of the book, the custom boxes, the warehouse, equipment and supplies. This was all before ISOM #1 ever went up for sale. Once it did, we obviously recouped the fees and then some. But let's discuss how the rest of the money was allocated. Let's start with the books. As you guys see, they are not at all cheap in physical quality. From the actual paper quality to the binding, which is Smythe sewn, you can see how good the quality is. It was printed right here in America as opposed to using far cheaper overseas options. And because we are a new company, we did not have a deal with a printer to get those cheaper rates. We now have a bargaining chip, but we certainly didn't have this initially. Some of you may remember me talking about front loading all of the initial books we purchased because we sold way more than our expectations. This pushed our fulfillment start date back a few weeks. Those books were already paid for with our startup costs. We just couldn't wait to get them drop shipped over the course of the following months like we initially planned. But in order to continue the selling of cover C after the campaign was done and for the next few years, we got a new purchase of about an additional additional 50,000 cover C's, which ran us almost $125,000. Moving on to shipping, you guys raved about the Rippaverse custom boxes. We didn't want to go with a standard like Gemini mailer for you guys that had orders with just books. Instead, we had a custom made, very sturdy box to finish the campaign, and everything afterwards, we ordered about 62,000 additional boxes, which were almost $30,000. The smaller mailer to protect the books if you ordered other merchandise items was also custom, and we had to get more of those. Now to the shipping itself, like with printing, we are a new company. Every major distributor has deals with USPS, UPS, FedEx, or DHL. If you promise them business or exclusivity, your rates will be far cheaper than everybody else's. We never had that, though we're finally able to have those conversations. Media mail is not an industry standard for mass distributors because comics don't qualify. USPS themselves even recommended to us that we don't do it even for graphic novels without ads because they're at high risk for inspection. This is something they've internally made it a point to crack down on, and of course, Rippaverse Comics is on the front of the box. Because our book with the packaging is over the limit, first class mail isn't an option either. So when we sent via USPS, we sent priority. Believe it or not, our shipping rates weren't expensive. We actually didn't charge you guys enough. There was a time where we were like 30 grand in the hole on shipping, getting absolutely destroyed internationally, especially. Thankfully, we think we are going to be able to have cheaper rates for our customers on the next campaign, which is a benefit to you all as well as a benefit to us. Companies losing on shipping isn't necessarily anything new. This should be rather expected. Also, keep in mind, every Rippaverse book is bagged and boarded, so those were additional supplies that we had to pay for. Let's move to the biggest expense that there's going to be for any company, and that's payroll. At the moment of me shooting this video, between both the distribution team and the day-to-day, we have around 15 employees and contractors, if you include myself. I make sure they're all paid competitively. That's just a reference. In the last quarter alone, we spent over $350,000 on payroll expenses, so you can imagine how much we need reserved for our employees for the next year, especially if the business is going to expand. We make sure they're all paid very well and on time. Because of our growing business, we are already in need of a new warehouse out here in Texas, which is near completion with the construction. We have a brand new, like 10,000 square foot building that will act as our headquarters. We can even expand on that building considering where it's at, and that's by design. For perspective, renting this area, you're not gonna spend anything less than 15 or 16 grand a month for something like that. So adding to the moving fees and all of the additional equipment, you can see how that's gonna pile up. We're also spending an additional about 180,000 grand worth of construction upgrades on the building for like offices and such. Once we saw the money and pre-orders come in, we didn't have much time to celebrate. We had to make sure that we got the ball moving on future content. We are a comic book business first and foremost. 2023 is going to be a massive year for us, and we want our books to be released in a timely manner. So we got started on 3 additional books, one being ISOM 2, and all of the books are at least 90 pages. There are several people that have to get paid in contract to complete a book. You have the writer, the penciler, and inker, and they're not always the same person, the colorist, and the letterer. This doesn't include editors and pre-press. And obviously, the better the talent, the more the page rate, as it should be. I can confirm that between the writing and artwork on one of these books, we've spent over $60,000 on it. And the cover work on all of these books costs thousands of dollars. So you have an idea of how much we're spending to get it made, and then you have to, of course, tack on the printing and other fees. Another thing is our physical merchandise. To get us through the campaign and having leftover inventory, we spent well over $100,000 for shirts and hats. The posters and tubes ran us about 10 grand, and the most expensive item per unit that we sold, which you can't buy anymore, were the document cards. Those ran us about 30 grand. And lastly, of course, I won't go into much detail on the Rippaverse channel. Well, Uncle Sam has to get his cut. We pride ourselves in our transparency, and we hope that you have a little better perspective. It's not that $3.7 million doesn't go a long way. It's that we are at a crucial stage with this company. If we want to remain self-sufficient, we have to be smart with our expenses. So, of course, nearly all of the money has to be reinvested into this company. It'll be this way for the foreseeable future. We want to expand, and with no other backing aside from the customers paying for the products, well, giving you what you want is all we have for the future investment. Well, I'm excited for the future, and I can't wait for you all to see the upcoming books. Thanks, and I appreciate you all for being a customer.